Hey guys, this is Brink. This is going to be my item progression video for Mid Invoker. Invoker is really fun to build items on too. He's pretty flexible in what you can build on him, and some items you might be getting like almost every game though at the same time, because some items are very good on this hero. So I guess we'll start off with your starting build. Your starting build is going to 99% of the time be a Null Talisman and a Fairy Fire and a Branch with 2 Tangos being pooled. Make sure you ask early for these Tangos, of course. If you do not get the Tangos, that'll be fine. Just make sure you don't buy your Fairy Fire and your Branch right away, because you want to make sure you get those Tangos. So if you do get the Tangos, have the Null 2 Tangos and the Fairy Fire Branch. And if you do not get the pooled Tangos, you're going to be wanting to buy your own Tangos and having your Null Talisman. So the only different time you're really going to be messing with this item build is going to be against maybe Razor. You're going to want maybe Boots first and Tangos, or Boots and pooled Tangos and then extra stat items of your own. And I guess against Zeus you can usually start with a wand, a full wand, and get 2 Fairy Fires or a Fairy Fire and a Branch with your pooled Tangos, of course. Moving on to your early game item progression. So with Invoker, you're going to have different focuses based on what build you're really going. So if you're going a more Quas focused build, you're going to be participating in a lot of team fights earlier, and you're going to want your most potential at this point in the game, so you don't want to hinder that. So unlike an Exort focused build, you're probably not going to want to go Midas too often on Quas Invoker. So on Quas Invoker, you're going to be wanting to focus on getting your phase boots as soon as possible. So when you get to your lane, you're going to have your Null in your inventory, or your Magic Wand if it's Zeus or something like that. You're going to have your starting build. You're going to want to get Boots or Blades of Attack as fast as you can. You choose this based on if you want positioning or extra last hitting potential. They're about the same price in the 400 gold range, but you're going to really want to get the Blade of Attack before Boots if you're having a hard time last hitting, because Quas Invoker, you can usually have a lot of trouble last hitting against a lot of heroes in the mid lane, as you don't have a lot of damage, and after the 6.87 nerf, your int's going to be even lower, so you're going to have a hard time without those Blades of Attack sometimes. But no matter what, you're really going to want your phase boots as your first item. From there, you can go a few different routes. You can go and Earn if you want to get an Earn. Earn synergizes very well with your Cold Snap ability, and Quas Invoker can make very good use out of an Earn pickup, as you're going to be team fighting pretty early on, and hopefully accumulating these Earn charges will help you sustain your teammates, as you don't really need as much sustain as them due to your Quas. Other ways you can go is straight into your Orchid, or even Drums on Quas Invoker is very good, anything like that sort. But even if you get an Earn, you can still work into Drums or Orchid based on the game, depending on what you really want to accomplish as your Quas Invoker. Invoker is very versatile. Your item builds can change very differently game to game. They can be very different, or they can stay pretty static for a lot of players. Some players are having a hard time with Invoker and they like to have comfortable item builds, which is okay, but you're going to try to want to mix things up based on the games to get the most benefit out of your hero and benefit your team the most you can. Alright, moving on for the Quas style into the mid-game item build progression. After you get your Orchid or your Drums, you have to start building based on the game a lot more. So depending on how much you get out of your Orchid or Drums pickup, it's usually going to be Orchid, as it's going to give you a lot more solo kill potential and just more presence in team fights usually. You're going to be wanting to build into based on the game. So if you want to go an Aghanim's build, Aghanim's earlier on Quas Invoker is pretty good. It's going to give you a lot of stats, and it's really going to help out your spell usage later. And it's just a really good item on Invoker, honestly. You can also build more into a right click with a Desolator if you're feeling like that style is going to benefit your team, but going like an Aghanim's or like a Sheep Stick, anything int based, and really that makes your hero a lot easier to use your spells and hit them all, and just be more of a benefit to your team, because with the Quas style, you're going Quas in the first place to compensate for your team's lack of crowd control or any utility in general, so it's just going to add to what you're giving your team. On Quas Exort Invoker in the early game, however, you're going to usually want to get your Midas up. Midas is very beneficial on Quas Exort Invoker, as you're not going to have the earliest presence in the laning stage of any other lanes, or even like the early part of the game in general, because it's going to take a little bit to get you online, and your Midas is really going to help progress your levels and your gold, of course, through Midas being a farming item as well. So that'll help you get your items online in total a lot quicker and really push you towards the later part of the game that you could be focused on if you're not completely all out pushing with double forges. So in the laning stage, you're going to usually want to get boots first, just brown boots, no phase. Unless you're against a hero that you might need more last hitting potential with, then you can rush a Ring of Basilius and then go back into boots. Doing this, it's going to slow down your Midas, but there's times where it might speed it up due to the fact that you can last hit easier, and otherwise you might not be getting as much farm as you are with the Basilius. Other lanes, such as Outworld Devourer, you can even input more gold into your early game build that's not into a Midas, be it through Basilius or Treads, just to make your lane a lot easier. But usually you're going to be wanting to focus on the brown boots, maybe a Basilius if you think you need it, and then straight into Midas from there, getting your Glove of Haste early in your lane too after your Basilius and boots, or just boots, just to give you the extra attack speed and harassment potential in lane and make your last hitting a lot easier. So once you finish your Midas, your item progression can really go in a bunch of different directions with Quas, Exort, Invoker. A regular item build nowadays in 6.87 is going into a Drums of Endurance, just like one way of going with the Quas Wex, but this time you're getting the Midas prior. And this is going to give you a lot of push potential and help out your movement speed, which Invoker is really lacking. So Drums is really going to help you out, whereas Quas Wex, you don't exactly need it for movement speed, as your Wex skill is going to give you a lot more movement speed and just mobility in general, really. Moving on from just the Drums build, you can go even into a Yules. Yules is very good on Quas, Exort, Invoker, especially if you're maxing out your Exort, and even if you're not even going the 404 build of getting the double Forge Spirits, 4 in Quas, 0 in Wex, 4 in Exort, which is what I mean by 404. And going into a Yules with more levels in Exort is going to give you really good setup for a Sunstrike Meteor combo. So from these two builds, the trend that you can notice is that the movement speed really matters. Both builds have movement speed in the Drums and the Yules pickups, and it really compensates for Invoker's lack of movement speed. After your Drums and your Midas pickups, you can go off in a bunch of different ways. If you're focusing on split pushing, you can get Boots of Travel directly after that, as you had your brown boots in your lane if you didn't go the Treads building as like an OD or something that you're having trouble with. And doing this will give you a lot more split push presence across the map and put a lot more pressure on the enemies to make different rotations that they wouldn't otherwise make. After a Boots of Travel, or even prior to the Boots of Travel, you can even go into an Aghanim's on this style Invoker as well. Aghanim's is a very good item on Invoker, almost every game, if not every game, so it's never really wrong to build into this, even as early as after Midas and Drums. Only time it would be a bit too early is probably straight after Midas. It's a 4200 gold item, and it takes a long time to get a 4200 gold the earlier it is in the game. So once your Midas is kicking in and your Drums is getting you around the map a lot quicker, you're going to be farming a lot faster and being able to get the Ags more efficiently than if you just got Ags straight after Midas, for instance. And another really good item on Quas, Exort, Invoker is definitely the Octarine core, kind of new to the game right now. A couple patches ago or something it was released. It's really good as it lowers all your spells cooldowns, all of your items cooldown, so if you have a sheep stick, it'll lower the cooldown too. And it also lets you heal off the damage you do. And remember, the point of playing Quas, Exort, Invoker is to output all of this damage. So that synergizes very well. It'll keep you alive in your team fights and really help out your spell use due to the cooldown reduction. Sheep is also, like I mentioned before, if you have a sheep, that's not bad. Sheep is a very good item on Quas, Exort, Invoker, even Quas Wex, of course. It's just going to give you a little bit more control, just so you can actually hit the damage that you are able to output. And this is very good for your split pushing focus, as you can really take out enemies that you find in the lanes that you split pushing, or things like that. But that's just one route, going this Ags type of build. You can also go into a faster Blink Dagger. So directly after your Drums, and your Midas, of course, your Midas into Drums build. Directly after this, you can build a Blink Dagger or build a Blink after your Boots of Travel. It's very dependent on the game and what playstyle you're comfortable with and what playstyle you're best at. So your Blink gives you a lot more mobility as well, which Invoker loves. Invoker loves mobility, but it can really be pretty underwhelming in a lot of cases if you're really focused on split pushing and you're not really helping your team out. So you're going to want to really focus on being a presence for your team if you get that Blink Dagger, unless you're just using it to do risky split pushing or anything like that. Blink Dagger is a very good setup for all of your spells. You can even obtain the Blink Dagger later in the game if you feel like you wanted to go like drums into eggs, even into Octarine, and get the Blink Dagger way after if you want to. Whenever you feel like you need positioning on Invoker and you're having a hard time getting your spells off, Blink Dagger is never really a bad pickup. Of course, Black King Bar, very good item in the late game. In the latter part of the game with Invoker, you might find yourself being controlled with a lot of sheep sticks or stuns in general. Spells are getting to higher levels, if not their max levels at this point, so they're going to be very potent. Things like Skywrath's Silence, Lion's abilities to stun you, things like that. Even burst potential, anything like Lion's Finger or Laguna Blade. If it doesn't have an Ags, of course, it can't go through BKB. Anything like that, you're probably going to be focused by these spells if you're doing good, because they don't really want an Invoker to really shut down their whole team fight at every point in the game. So BKB is a very good alternative to going like an Ags right away if you're having a lot of trouble, but it's pretty good if you can get it later in the game too, as these fights in the later part of the game, people are going to be doing more, and if you get a BKB earlier in the game, you're going to usually be using it more and lowering the duration of your BKB as the game progresses. So if you can last throughout a game and get a BKB later, you're going to have a higher duration on it at that stage of the game that's already late in the game. So it's going to be a very beneficial BKB to you and your team, as you're going to get a lot of value out of it at this point in the game. Another way to build Quas Exort Invoker, even Quaswex at times, I guess, but usually Quas Exort will make more use out of it, is going Necronomicon. Necronomicon is one of, if not the best pushing items in the game, and throwing a Necronomicon and Forge Spirits at a tower, and even throwing an Alacrity on your Necronomicon or your Forges, and just leaving. Those units are going to do a lot of damage to towers, and you don't even have to be there to do it. So that's a very strong point about Quas Exort Invoker, and Necronomicon synergizes very, very well with Alacrity and Forged Spirits. Just your whole build on Quas Exort can really be benefited by your Necronomicon pickup. And you can be a very potent split pusher, and especially in team fights, Necronomicon's running around, it does a lot of damage, and it can be very disruptive to an enemy's team fight or what they had really planned, as it brings a whole new element into the team fight sometimes. But you can usually use it best for split pushing, getting those towers, and when you're breaking high ground, Necronomicons with Alacrity, really, really good shredding the tower, and doesn't really put yourself into a bad position. So, all in all, Invoker's item builds are very, very flexible. You can get a ton of different items, a ton of different circumstances. It comes down to playing a ton of games, figuring out what would have benefited you in situations, and when you come across situations that are similar in the future, you'll know what's a better item to build than what you built last time, for instance. Or if what you built last time worked out pretty well, just build it again, see how it goes, maybe change up something else. It's all about playing a lot of games and getting a good understanding of how you yourself and your team are benefited from your item progression. As Invoker being one of the most flexible heroes in the game, you can really mix it up game to game, just based on what you're playing against and what you're playing with, of course. So that's basically it. Once again, I'm Brink. This has been the video on your item progression on mid-Invoker, and hopefully you enjoyed. If you have any questions, of course, it can be pretty intimidating to build Invoker, as you can feel pretty locked into a style once you start. But if you have any questions about what styles are best for what items, or if items are even good on Invoker, or if you feel like a certain item build is really, really good that I didn't go over, maybe I forgot, maybe I haven't tried it or anything, just leave it in the comments below. I'll be reading through, and hopefully I can help you out with any decisions you make for the Invoker guide in the future, or just Invoker games for you guys in general. So thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.